People scream. A piercing sound travels down the long wax corridor at the center of For Life, where behind every door an anonymous meeting is in session. Heather holds herself still at her receptionist desk where she hears it. Even though it's not the first time, she stops breathing. Like maybe she can see or feel where the unsettling cry is coming from. For this 1 minute listening, she is alone. Afterwards, she'll tally tonight's donations on the computer even faster than usual so she can get out of here. But she still feels panicky. She's mostly alone in her apartment, too. Though Lenora next door is pretty cool. It's not like they're best friends. Lenora must be 10 years older. She lives in a real house right below Heather's apartment. Sometimes she lets Heather lay out in the backyard to soak rays. Who would make such a noise at the center? Is this person okay? She's not sure where it's coming from. Alcoholics Anonymous, gamblers, overeaters, sexaholics, narcotics, rageaholics Anonymous? Did his wife leave him because he couldn't stay out of Vegas? Is he fat, in debt, horny, a wino? She can't quite get comfortable in her mini and new red Esperantos that tie around her ankles, so she keeps crossing her legs and recrossing them. Members walk by, eyeing her nose ring and the tats on her arms, but she tries not to care. After all, these people are old, in their 30s, some even in their 40s. And they have problems, something Heather hopes she herself will never have. For now, she just can't wait to go clubbing with Raymond after work. Did you hear that sound? She asked a woman hurrying past. She asked because sometimes she feels like there's a moat between her and the rest of the world, and she wants to make sure somebody else heard the scream too. But the woman just smiles a fakey smile, shrugs, and keeps moving. Tonight has been like most Wednesday nights at the Center for Life. She passed out envelopes for donations, the regulars filed through, and she gave them guarded smiles. She wishes she were home in her apartment. From her vantage upstairs, she has a view over the whole neighborhood and feels like she knows those people, especially after going to the party for the anniversary of the plane crash. At the center, the one she thinks of as Rug Man winked and jerked his head as he went by, making her wonder why the rug didn't come flying off. Why he didn't just shave his head like everyone else these days, she doesn't know. Then came the one always carrying a briefcase and wearing white, who she still thinks of as the efficiency expert. He walks by her desk 3 times, dragging his finger over the fake wood, thinking she didn't notice, then, as usual, stopped to ask the question, "Could I get a receipt?" After the meeting, she always tells him, "You look stunning this evening." He's so lame. He says it every Wednesday night. Even Wally from Poway, north of San Diego, showed up wearing his United Parcel uniform, rolling his eyes and saying he'd come to put in his 2 hours. But by the time she hears the shriek on this Wednesday, it's 7:30 p.m. and everyone is inside the rooms and the hallway is all but deserted. Heather took the receptionist job at the center because she thought she'd meet more interesting people. Well, men. Than she did at City College. More mature, more worldly, but sometimes she thinks that on Wednesday nights, the place should be called the Center for the Dead. With the way people walk around licking their wounds, glassy-eyed on the brink of falling apart. Besides, now she's met Raymond and she's about to change her major to art. She'll fit in better in art, and Raymond likes the sound of it. She steps outside to smoke a cigarette so she won't have to listen to the scream anymore. She supposes she does look pretty good tonight because she just had her hair shaved from the level of her ears on down and dyed the tips of the rest of it mauve in anticipation for switching to her art department. And she's wearing a new pleather jacket, violet, that looks like leather but isn't from dead animals. Raymond thinks that's cool. As soon as she steps back inside, she hears the shriek again, and the old memories come up. It feels like a scream she always wanted to scream but has never been able to allow herself to. The sound is clear, but tonight it's bottomless, a moan from the depths of the belly, and it goes on for longer than seems possible, eventually fading out into a dry whimper. It sounds like a dog throwing his head back and yowling at the moon, a train flying through the mountains riding the horn, a baby desperate to be held. She doesn't want to think about either sound or what's causing it. She swims to the other side of her moat, sorts her receipts by room number, stamps personal checks with the center stamp. Most of the group send in a check or two. Except for the debtors group, their envelope contains only cash. Heather's tats in her hair, which she messed around with before leaving the center, don't seem quite so unusual later at Myth, a rave club in an abandoned warehouse in the Gaslap quarter of San Diego. In order to find where Myth moves every week, you have to be cool enough to have the phone number. Even that changes occasionally. She's glad Raymond came and picked her up from work because something foul-smelling is going on inside her own vehicle that she can't figure out. A rotten piece of fruit under one of the seats, a moldy sandwich. "So, how was work today?" She shouts over a narcoleptic youth song, "I Can Be a Bitch If I Want to Be a Bitch." mainly because she wants him to ask her. Raymond especially likes the band because they skateboard on stage. They're leaning against a waist-high two-person table. Raymond helps train dogs, takes them to local convalescent homes where he lets them shake hands and be petted, have their ears and chest scratched, which for some reason cheers people up. He takes the class once in a while and says he wants to have his own business, though Heather doubts it will ever happen. She thinks of one of many times during the 16 years she lived at home when her father said he was going to open his own garage. Humming an old Beatles song one morning, he toasted himself an English muffin, a slice of margarine waiting at the end of his knife. He checked the liquor cabinet to see whether he'd have to go out that day while Heather read the back of a cereal box. "Yup, hun," he said. "A few more years of this 9-to-5 shit and I'm on my own." Heather nodded, only briefly glancing up from the box. "Nobody breathing down my back anymore. Nobody okaying my vacations." When he wasn't talking, he hummed "I Am the Walrus." "No more dirty fingernails for the old man, know what I mean?" He knocked the cereal box away so she couldn't help seeing the oil stains on his hands. Raymond waves his hand to get the cocktail waitress's attention, the blue streaks in his hair catching in the brilliant bands of light. At first, Heather thought his impatience meant he was a born leader. Lately, she's had trouble resurrecting this fantasy. Heather shouts, "The screamer screamed again tonight. It's so loud I can't figure out who's doing it." "Some poor bastard." Raymond makes a clicking noise with his mouth. "Hey, you want me to go have a talk with somebody or something?" "Raymond, somebody's just unhappy." She sighs and goes back to watching people dance. She's learned in the short time she's known him that he's from a family of men who drink too many beers. When they play horseshoes, they burp and they say things like, "Excuse me, must have been someone I ate." It's 1:30 a.m., and Raymond and Heather have arrived at Denny's earlier than the others. Two young girls, maybe 17 or 18, have scooched onto the orange vinyl in the next booth over. Both have blonde hair, both are slender. They glance over at the mauve on Heather's tips and quickly look away. They're with a man who's about 40. Heather wishes she could hear their conversation better. The blonde girl seems so normal. Maybe she'd get the answers to some of her own family questions. Maybe she'll bleach her hair blonde. The three are fairly animated, first laughing, then shaking their heads, then making vehement assertions they all seem to agree on. The latter is what makes Heather doubt the man's their father. Why would they tell him about something that really matters? She hears a lot of loud whispering, something involving a friend they haven't seen. One girl starts crying. Heather stops herself. Of course the man could be their father. Girls like this, soft brown eyes, barrettes in their neatly parted hair, cardigan sweaters, have fathers they can confide in. Soon enough, two other couples Raymond knows join them. "Where'd you end up?" one of the guys asks. "Mitch," says Raymond. "Woman wasn't having a good time, so we dogged it." Rose, the waitress, had stopped by several times scowling, on the verge of telling them, as she always does, that they can't have a booth unless each of them orders. Rose, so old she has to be 87, must have started in her tan Denny's uniform before any of them were born. Heather can attest to the last 6 years anyway, since that when she turned 16 and got her license and started driving over for coffee to get out of the house. She could hardly stand to look at Rose, whose life seemed so squelched that she cares more about the number of Splendid packets people use than anything else. Heather imagines her going home to a studio apartment above a bar where a neon light flashes blue into her living room and the closet contains nothing but Denny's uniforms. "Raymond, Rose is on her way over here again," Heather whispers, wondering why he has never before seen how juvenile he is. "Relax, babe, you're giving me the creeps," Raymond tells her. Heather scoots out of the booth. In the parking lot, she sniffs back tears. He always wants to tell her what to do. Then she notices Wally from Poway pushing his way through Denny's revolving glass door alone. He isn't wearing the United Parcel uniform she saw him in earlier, and she thinks he looks okay. Of course he isn't her type, though who is her type escapes her at the moment. She pretends to be looking something up in the yellow pages of a phone book, watches Wally take a seat at the counter. When she was 9 years old, she used to sit at the Denny's counter with her dad and order waffles, just the two of them. He didn't turn poisonous until later. By the time she was 17, she hardly heard anything he said. She went underwater. The words he sent her way turned into sound waves, diluted by the time they reached her. She moored her deepest thoughts and dreams, rarely letting them drift to the surface, only vaguely into the real world. When anybody spoke to her, unless she really concentrated, she only caught about half of what they said. People were always asking where she was, what continent, what planet, what universe. The moat worked for a long time, but lately it seems to be drying up. She can't get away from the world. The part of her that matters seems unguarded. There's all that screaming. Heather, Raymond says, on his way toward the phone booth. Come on. Under exterminators and the yellow pages, Heather sees Lloyd's Pest Control, Pied Piper Termite and Pest, the Terminator. I'm not going, she tells him. Raymond sidles up beside her. What do you mean? How are you going to get home? I'll manage, Heather says, her eyebrows arched. That's why she should have driven her own car, so she could leave when she wanted. But then she remembers her car has that smell of rotten oranges, day-old cabbage that has turned up out of nowhere and won't go away. Suddenly getting rid of Raymond becomes all important. Leave, she whispers. Fine, Raymond says, his face bright red, like I need this. And before she knows it, he and his friends peel out, trailing smoke into Denny's parking lot. Even though she told him to go, she never really expected to be standing here alone. She looks up. Taxi cabs. Yellow, red medallion, bills. Through the glass of Denny's, Wally is engrossed in his newspaper, enjoying a burger and fries. She guesses he must not be in the Overeaters Anonymous, unless this is a binge. Hey, Wally, she says, standing beside him now. Wally jumps, folds his newspaper, wipes his mouth with a napkin, though it isn't even dirty. She guesses he's uncomfortable around women. That is not a sexaholics meeting he attends at the center. What are you doing out so late on a Wednesday night? She asks. Second job. Started doing a little bartending to pay some bills. How about you? Heather stares at his mustache. He doesn't sound like he's in AA or in a serious trouble with debts. Would she be able to get him to shave the mustache if they became involved? Would he try to tell her what to do? If they got married, would he keep a second job? Look, she says, can you give me a ride home? It's not far. North Park, just off of 805 south of University. I had a fight with this guy. Wally seems nervous. She wonders if he's married. Maybe he's got kids at home asleep. Isn't that where the plane crashed all those years ago? The one that ran into the Sensa? Heather nods, and he says he'll give her a ride. They're in the alley behind Denny's, and Wally's unlocking his beat-up Dodge hatchback. There aren't any Legos in the back, but now she sees he must be older than she thought. 35? There are his ZZ Top cassettes to consider, and his mustache is so 80s. 37? Do you have kids? She asks. 2, he says, before climbing in and slamming his door twice before it was shut. Wish they lived with me, but they're with their mom. See them all I can. Before she gets in, she hears a scream from down the alley. Maybe it's a cat. Maybe it's a woman. She never thought about the sex of the screamer before. In fact, the scream in the alley doesn't sound so different from her own voice. She hears it again. Frozen. Fascinated, she looks over at Wally, who is watching her listen. It's a thick scream, a knobby scream from the depths of someone's or something's being. It's the scream of 2 girls out with a boy who's driving his Pontiac too fast, a cat who has been treed, a woman giving birth to a child. It's a scream of someone who's won at the lottery, a man finding his dog dead of old age on the back porch, a woman jumping from a car after her husband slapped her for being too friendly with the waiter. The air afterward is tight, too quiet. Heather's ears are attuned to the slightest sound. Getting in, Wally says. Then she remembers where she is, and she does get in the car. Did you hear that? She says. Someone screaming, Wally says, shrugging. It just unnerves me. So, where are you headed? She gives directions. She says, have you heard the person at the center? Every Wednesday night someone screams. It's a loud, horrible scream. None of the doors open and no one ever comes out. People scream, Wally says. They drive for a while. He hasn't lit a joint yet, so she doesn't think he's a part of the NA. What will he think of her majoring in art? Most likely that isn't practical. She wonders how he'd feel about a career in nursing. Tell the truth, she says. Don't you think those people at the center are mental? They're at an intersection and Wally glances over at her. Like 4 hairy caterpillars, his eyebrows and mustache all rise in unison when he smiles. He's not so bad looking. He has a hot smile and only the beginnings of a beer gut. You're young, he says. People get weird as they get older. It's too much work to keep trying to be normal, and you can't help being weird after all you've been through. It's better to accept it and move on. Heather studies the awnings, shops, and gas stations as they get closer to North Park. Then, as the hatchback accelerates, stops concentrating at all and allows them to blur into a long, fuzzy streak. Don't you think it's strange, she says, that none of those people have anything better to do than go talk to complete strangers on a Wednesday night? Vaguely, it dawns on her that maybe she shouldn't be saying this since Wally himself goes to those meetings. Is this where I turn? He asks. Heather nods and points. It's an apartment building. The guy next door, I think he was in the hospital. He said the apartment used to be a grocer's in the 30s. Wally tips his head to one side. And can you believe that little strip of bright green lawn right there? My landlord just painted it. Can you believe he'd paint the lawn? A lot of people are looking at why they're unhappy, Wally says. A lot of people aren't satisfied, and they want to know why. They don't want to sit around and pretend like their parents did. Right here, in front of this old station wagon? Yeah, Heather says, and then she laughs. That's my old clunker. People take what they can out of those meetings and leave the rest. You're the one who has to live with it. You're the one who has to be able to stand the thoughts in your head. Wally parallel parks and turns and says, do you know you left your window down? It's been broken for months. I want to sell the car and get a better one. He pulls on the handbrake, cuts the ignition. She wonders if this means he'll walk her to her door, try to kiss her. They face each other in the old bucket seats, the gear shift their only obstacle. Nice, quiet neighborhood, Wally finally says, one of his elbows leaning against the steering wheel, the other over the back of the seat. She sits tall. She doesn't want to slouch like her father used to complain of. She sits tall so she won't look dumpy, shakes the hair around her face. They lean forward, closer. She's sure they're going to kiss. The moment, the quiet. She imagines a time not too long ago in the future where he'll love her so much, think she's so beautiful, he'll follow her into her apartment, he'll undress with only the streetlight shining through her windows, he'll help pull out the sofa bed unless they're too passionate to wait that long. I think someone's in your car, Wally says, stepping outside onto the street. What? Heather's still in another world in her apartment with her clothes off, stroking Wally's head while he suckles her breast, his brows and mustache brushing against her chest. But Wally is already inspecting. Someone's in my car, she says. She hesitates, checks to make sure her clothes are really on, then jumps out after him. She's not sure whether the explosion she hears a couple of blocks over is a gun being shot or just the backfiring of a car. Why do loud noises, screams seem to always follow her? Wally leans down, peers inside the station wagon window, when he suddenly throws the door open. The dome light illuminates an older man curled on her back seat. He has a dingy blanket over him, and there are plastic grocery bags everywhere, stuffed with newspaper, aluminum cans, clothes, and food. Oh my God, Heather says. Oh my God, who is he? Is he dead? She pulls the sleeves of her pleather jacket down over her hands, the collar up over her nose and ears, to cover up her nose and ears. If only she could disappear. What must Wally think? She has to make it clear to him that this isn't normally how her life is, that sleazy things like this are out of the ordinary. But Wally is laughing. Looks to me like he's had a few, he says. Heather shrieks at the man, get out of my car! This is my car! Wally lifts her by the middle, carefully places her several feet away on the sidewalk. Take it easy, he says. Unless you know who the guy is, you don't need more problems. I'm sure, of course I don't know who he is. I don't know people like this. Wally heads back to the car just as the old man sits up in the back seat, scratches the dark film over his face and neck, the only parts of his skin they can see. What's happening, he says. Time to move along, champ, Wally tells him. Sure, okay. The man flings old newspapers out of the door, 3 tattered coats, a piece of cardboard, his smelly blanket follows. No harm, no foul, he mumbles, trying his shoes. Just a few nights. No way, Heather says. He's lying, she tells Wally, but even as she's saying it, she knows it's true. The funny odor in the car now makes sense, as did the bag of full aluminum cans she found on the back seat last week that she couldn't remember putting there. Get out of my car! Heather shrieks again, breaking out of Wally's hold. She socks the man in the shoulder and in the chest. She doesn't know how people get like him, but she has to fight back to make sure it won't happen to her. Wally pulls her away again, and she's crying. Did you smell my car? She says. He's the one who should be in AA. He's the one who needs help. The man straightens up from tying his shoes. There ain't no help for this, sweetheart, he mumbles. This is hell we're in right now. There ain't no help for human beings. Could you hold her a minute, bub, while I go get my cart? The man scurries off down the valley, long gray hair, not putting much weight on one of his legs, and returns quickly with a Walgreens shopping cart. Taking more bags from the car, he stacks them on a sidewalk, just like she does when she's been shopping, then disappears quickly around the corner. Heather feels a gentle hand on her shoulder. I'll walk you to your place, Wally says. She sees the blueness of the television flickering at her landlord's. He leans out, his hands on his screen door just below his porch light so that she can see his cuticles are stained green. Everything okay, he calls? He probably watched the whole thing from his window, will probably think of something she did wrong, or try to charge her for having a roommate since the guy was sleeping in her car. Wally waves the landlord away, and Heather wonders why a man who has to be nagged about fixing leaky pipes cares so much about how green his lawn is. It's like her own father, wanting to be sure the pails were wheeled in the second the garbage man emptied them, meticulous about his hibiscus, always the one in the neighborhood to put out a flag on holidays. If you can make things look right, maybe no one would notice the rest. She's beginning to think it's crucial that she mention what's going on underneath, the things that don't get said. She's beginning to think she's going to have to speak up or lose it, tell people how they can treat her, and how they can't if she wants to feel better. Stop worrying about the mood. You can't permit strange men to live in your car. You can't pretend it's not happening. Even thinking this makes her stand up straighter, feel more in control. Wally is laughing on her front porch. Were you listening? Did you hear what he said? Who? The landlord. He saw the guy take all the bags out of the other morning, and then he put them all back that night. But he wasn't sure whether or not the guy might be some relation to you. I'm sure, Heather says, too angry to look at him. Wally continues laughing, but he lets go of Heather's arm. How do people get like that old guy? Heather wants to know. It'll be okay, says Wally. Just move the car in the morning. He follows her up the stairs to her place. I just want to look out your back window, he says. I think that's where the plane crash happened. She leaves the lights off so they can see better, and they peer through the east window. She wonders if he'll try something up here. See right there where all the new buildings are, he says. When she looks, she notices for the first time that the homes do seem different. Those are the ones that went up in the late 70s, Wally says, pointing. Look at the sliding glass doors. That one has a hot tub. She wonders what that day was like. Cool area, he says. All the old houses from the 20s and 30s. Sometimes when calls land on the telephone wire right there, I even recognize some of them, like they're an olive-colored one with red on his head. Wally nods. She gazes at the homes below. Sometimes I hear people arguing. Seems like an arguing neighborhood. Everyone has problems. There's a couple that lives right down below, she says, pointing next door. Sometimes the husband, I think he used to work for the newspaper, lies out in the backyard at night when he thinks nobody's looking and stares at the stars. He's kind of strange. I like his wife, though. Lenora, the one with the geraniums. Then there's these skateboard brothers who get pretty loud across the street. Wally doesn't try to kiss her goodnight when he leaves. Doesn't even ask for her number. See you next Wednesday, is all he says when he leaves. Heather wonders if he thinks her life is full of busted car windows, fights at Denny's, that she'll actually like her job as a receptionist. She locks and chains the front door, pushes a chair in front of it, closes all the windows in her apartment tightly. She isn't going to let anybody hurt her ever again. The next day she skips classes, then calls in sick at the center. All they have is swimming lessons that night anyway, and a fencing class. They'll get along fine without her. She spends the day watching television and staring out the window to make sure the old man doesn't come back. She can't afford to have men living in her space without asking. That night she parks the car 2 streets over, then calls in sick on Friday as well. She spends the afternoon at City College, careful to make her appointment with a different counselor than the one who helped her change her major to art. She wants Wally to see her as smart, practical. She lies low over the weekend, discards so many items from her closet that she feels she's starting her life over. She sprays her car with deodorizer more than once, changes her nail color from black to red, neglects to answer the phone, or at least she would if it ever rang. Finally, Wednesday rolls around. She takes great pains with her appearance. Gone are the mini and high-heeled esperados. Gone is the vampire's cerise lipstick. Instead, she wears tight blue jeans. Wally will love them. Leather boots, her feet can breathe, a bandana tied around her head like a pirate. Only the mob tips show. For Wednesday night, people have begun to show up. Heather watches them carefully as she gives directions and answers the phone. She wants to know why she's been able to live through so much, moving out on her own at 17, taking care of herself from then on, and yet these people can't seem to get through their little problems. She wants to know if there's a pattern as to who gives in which door, who goes in which doors. She thinks it can't be just random. There's Rug Man winking as usual. She smiles, so he lingers a bit. She's thinking he's not so bad. She can make him feel more comfortable about his balding, get him to shave. She can consider a career in psychology. Just as she loses sight of him, there's the efficiency expert making his second trip by her desk. He drags his fingers down the fake oak, has begun to ask a question when the phone rings. He tells her she looks stunning, but he'd probably prefer her in a clean tailored suit. When she looks up again, there's Wally from Poway. Cheers, he says brightly. Could he be going to AA after all? He leans against her desk, asks how she is, checks out the fit of her jeans. Sexaholics Anonymous? You know, I'm embarrassed, Heather says, about the other night, the man sleeping in my car. I have no idea how we got there. Wally smiles. He really is hot. Forget it. He's no more desperate than the rest of us. I didn't want you to think. Oh, I don't think anything, Wally says. Feel like getting something to eat later? I got the night off from tending bar. She's going to say yes, of course, but then there's a loud noise at the entrance, so she turns and sees that someone's umbrella is jammed in the revolving door. He pulls and pulls, but seems stuck behind the glass forever. She knows Wally's still there as her phones light up. She answers 3 calls in a row, gives directions, information, advice. Then she looks up. Everyone's gone. Behind all of those doors, even Wally. Which door did he go through? All she can see is row after shiny row of black and white tile. She can hear the clock making distinctly separate ticking and talking noises when the halls are this quiet, this still. The hallway reminds her of the long tunnel of her adolescence, of being completely alone, of knowing no way out, of having no one to care. She's prepared to stay open somewhat. She's never going to shut down as much as her father did, but she's going to bridge the moat. She glances around, afraid of what she knows will happen, what she knows she will hear. She could still call Myth. The club is always there, no matter what she has gone through. She dials a number. She still has a few outfits she hasn't thrown away. There's the plastic dress, a roll of stick-on tattoos. She could still go home and roll the skirt up short. A man answers, but before giving her Myth's current location, he wants to know who she is. Suddenly, she can't think of a thing to say. The line goes dead. Cold. Could he really have hung up on her? After a whole year? And she hears it. The scream. The inconsolable cry of a child who has lost both her parents forever. A girl irretrievably alone. A woman trying to accept this but still yearns for something more. She has to command her legs to hold a few more minutes as she runs down the slippery waxed hallway. Which door did Wally go in? Which door did Wally go in? Which door was it? Then she sees that it's not important, and she picks a door. Any door.